afternoon. We'll go ahead and get started. April 25th, meeting of Des Moines Waterworks Board of Trustees. We are still intact as an entity.
Yay.
So how about that? Which I think calls for a thanks to all of our public members and customers that reached out and supported the utility. So thank you to all of you that are watching and listening. Our consent agenda, we're going to take just items A and B. I'm going to pull C for an explanation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
A second.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then separately under list of payments, Bill, I believe you wanted to cover some things there.
Just a quick issue relative to pension contributions. If you look at page 13 and 14 of these payments, you'll see payment first of $237,000 and change. It's a quarterly payment to the Principal Life insurance company for our continuation, if you'll recall, of the existing Des Moines Waterworks pension plan that was frozen, but to which we still have obligations now 4 years ago. And it's not very often that that quarter rolls over and we're able to see what our IPER's contributions are. And in the next page, on page 14, you see a sum of $183,000. That would be a monthly contribution. And I believe that's the employer's contribution, or is that combined?
That would be both.
That would be both, okay. Did I do the math here? 3/5. Yes, I think that's right. Yeah, 3/5 of that contribution would be ours. Well, I may not be right, but I'm faster. I just wanted you to have a sense that we continue to have lingering contributions for the existing but frozen plan, and obviously ongoing contributions under IPERS. If I may, Sue, a little bit of field here. Just offer that the Union of Leadership was re-elected last night. That is Brian Polpeter, Jeannie Middleton, and Bill Blubaugh. And it continues to be a pleasure, or if at least not a pleasure, an opportunity to work with them on a regular basis, sometimes pleasurable, sometimes more of an opportunity. But we're very pleased as a senior management group that they continue to represent our unionized employees and do so with great sincerity and reasonableness. But they were re-elected last night. That's all I had on your list of things.
Like I said, I talked to Danny Holman today, and he said his action was appreciative that we extended the contracts and worked well with the people here.
Excellent. So I'll be looking for a motion on the remaining consent agenda items, including our next meeting, which will be May 23rd.
So moved.
Pardon? Didn't you already have a motion and second?
That was on.
We pulled.
That was
Oh,
on A and B, and this
Just making sure everybody's paying attention.
Someone isn't.
Almost everybody.
I'm paying attention. I just jealous work.
So we had a motion from Dave and a second, I believe, from Mark.
Great.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Before we move into the public comment period, and it looks like we have all staff members here in the audience, but not too long ago there was an article in the Register talking about the city of Des Moines appointments that had been made to boards and commissions and the poor attendance at many of these, with several individuals not attending, multiple meetings. So the mayor has provided to us a certificate, which I want to make sure we award today to Dave Carlson in recognition of perfect attendance during the 2016 calendar year. So Dave,
Is that good?
that's good, especially in 2016. Excellent. Thank you very much. And all of our members have great attendance, so I'm glad that that's not an issue since I've been on this board that we have ever had to deal with in looking at our bylaws and being challenged with not meeting the requirements that we have. So we'll move into action items. First item is A, which requires a public hearing. So from this, have we received any public comments?
I'll let you open the public hearing here.
Okay, first we open a public hearing and look for any comments that we have from the public concerning the project's form of contract plans and specifications.
For the nitrate removal facility process residual pumping station.
We need to state that. Okay, thank you, Counselor.
There have been no public comments outside of the regular bidding process that staff's received on this suit.
Okay, then I'll close the public hearing. And we find that the board project reflects the appropriate coordination of existing infrastructure and that there are no suitable facilities available for rent or sharing. Is that correct?
That is correct. I think you want a motion for adoption of the form of plans, specifications, contract, and estimated costs.
Sounds good. Do we have such a motion?
Second.
Okay. And then a general manager review. Oh, we need to take a vote on this. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and now we'll move into general manager analysis of the bids.
There were 6 bid packets taken out, but only 2 bids received. You'll note that the engineering estimate of this project, this is one of 2 components of our nitrate denitrification regen disposal project. You know now that we discharge by permit and by requirement directly into the Raccoon River. We're moving away from that and will be via pump station near the filter building, pumping by conveyance underneath the Raccoon River to an area up near the old art store, if that helps you, and into the city's sanitary sewer to be then treated at the WRA, the Regional Wastewater Reclamation Authority. 2 pieces of that. This is the first piece, pump station, estimate about $950,000. The bids received actually are on each side of that. We are recommending a staff Widener Construction be awarded this bid for just shy of $206,000. Happy to answer any questions you may have on this. You will see the second component of this, the conveyance or piping project, during your May board meeting.
I've kind of got one question, and maybe you don't have it on the top of your head, but what does this make our nitrate removal system? Do you have an idea of how much we have in it, and then how much additional this is adding to our investment in this system?
A lot of moving parts there, David, so let me try to answer it. This is dealing not with additional denitrification, but only with the waste. We're going to be talking actually at the Planning Committee meeting next week about an RFP for adding additional nitrification from 10 million gallons to 20 million gallons here at Fleur Drive. So I'm not sure that answered your question. If not, try me again.
How much have we invested? Do you know how much about we've invested already in this?
Since the construction of the facility in 1993.
Including that.
I would not know the 25-year history of investment in that. I'm sure there isn't anybody present who would have that off the top of their head. We can certainly look at that. The original construction, as I recall, was $9 million.
That's what I was going to say. It seemed like about $10 million we have in it already.
I'm sure we probably have. Depending on what you mean by having in it, certainly we have operating costs, but additional investment in the capital infrastructure, we can certainly do a check and see if we can come up with that number. But the $10 million or so that you're talking about is easily eclipsed by 2017 or 2018 numbers. Different technology, different costs, but we'll be happy to try and find that number for you.
But we're going to have in our nitrate removal the cost of a moderate-sized water treatment plant just in a...
Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. There's no question that the technology to remove nitrate, the ionization process or the resin process, whatever form of compound we're going to be using as we move forward in 2017 dollars, will look a lot like
Sailor Moffett,
a new treatment plant. Certainly not quite of that magnitude, but it's a significant investment in being able to better clean the water without adding additional overall treatment capacity.
Wow, that's...
Okay, so we'll be looking for a motion on this one to award the nitrate removal facility processing residual pumping station contract to, is it Wider Construction or Weeder?
Widener, I believe.
Widener Construction in the amount of $905,889 and authorize the chairperson and CEO and general manager to execute the contract.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we'll go to item 3B. And this is another public hearing that we will be having. So I will open the public hearing for comments from the public concerning the project's formal contract plans and specification. Have we received any comments?
Relative to the 2017 Polk County Water System Improvement Contract 1.
Thank you.
Did we okay, Council? Okay, he's
Good.
nodding his head.
Good.
Other than the bidding process itself, staff has received no comment from the public on this issue.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing then. And we find, just to confirm with you, Bill, that the project reflects the appropriate coordination of existing infrastructure and that there are no suitable facilities available for rent or sharing in lieu of the project.
That's correct.
Okay, so I would seek a motion to approve the project's form of contract, plans, and specifications and estimated cost.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And now it's time for our general manager to provide an analysis of the bids and make a recommendation.
Definitely an indication that the bidding climate is, how would I put it, active. That is, there's a lot of work out there, and although we distributed 8 bid packets here, only 2 respondents, but very close to the engineering estimate here. You'll recall that we have a base bid and an alternative bid to maximize the amount of pipe within our budget. This is within the Polk County system, and we have 2 responsive bidders here, J&K Contracting, and Holbrook, both of which are involved in projects with us now, very familiar to us, unlike the item before where the 2 responsive bidders have not done work for us before. In this contract, a piping contract, 2 very familiar respondents, and staff is recommending the lower of the 2, J&K Contracting, for the WSI Polk County project before you.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to award the 2017 Polk County Water System Improvement Contract 1 to J&K Contracting, LLC, in the amount of $1,070,617, and to authorize chairperson and CEO and general manager to execute the contract. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion on this? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, and we'll move into item 3C, Bill.
I think the board will probably recall discussions we've had over the last couple years about the difficulties of having continued attachments onto our standpipe and other water storage facilities relative to cell phone agreements. Once upon a time, I think we all thought that would be a good source of revenue with minor inconvenience. A couple years ago, after discussions with the board, we've turned a corner and are going to the point of relocating facilities where it works onto monopoles and off our existing facilities. This involves the Tenney standpipe in Merle Hay, where we are terminating our lease with Nextel. There are a number of finishing items that are necessary as we terminate off a lease like that. Some of them are essentially punch list items, restoration items on our facilities from their removal, and then public record related issues as a real estate lease that we are coming to you today and asking for your approval to terminate the lease and allow us to final this out, if you will. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
So I'll be looking for a motion to approve and authorize the chairperson and CEO and general manager to execute the memorandum of license termination and release with Nextel WIP Lease Corporation for the license at the Tenney Standpipe site.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? You're making this way too easy, Lord. So, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Great. Motion passes.
Is it 2014 or is it?
That's correct, Dan. That's correct. David, we've been working on that. Dan and his staff have been working with Nextel and other providers for some length of time, but yes, it takes several years to walk these through, unfortunately.
Okay, now we have a number of reports. We'll start with the Planning Committee. David?
Let's see. The Planning Committee met Tuesday, April 4th, and we talked about our diversity programs, and I guess from having a long time perspective of the issue, I think the atmosphere in Des Moines Waterworks has changed considerably, at least as far as the leadership. It's all spoken of positively, and I guess I'd always like to see more aggressive programs. And we hired a company that I guess I'm a little cynical on some of these things. You hire a company now to show that you're doing what the law says. But I would really like to see us do a lot more than the law requires in our hiring. And I think we have a huge change, but the world is changing too. But I think we're on the positive side. I'd just like to see a more aggressive program, but I think it's a huge change compared to what Waterworks was 10 or 15 years ago, or 10 years ago. You know that, Sue, the difference in attitude here. As far as
I had made the recommendation on the group that you brought in, so and I've heard
I don't mean to be
follow-up
cynical.
from them. They do great work, and I'd heard very positive things about
Good.
how it went, but I guess I would look to you, Bill.
May I comment just quickly to make sure that all of the board is following Dave's
Yeah, I didn't really
kind of overview. We have hired, in addition to Renee Hardeman, who you're talking about, to do some training and help us with a review of our approach. We also hired an outside company to do a statistical analysis of what the labor markets look like within job groups and compare that labor market and the demographics of the local labor market with our particular history here, in particular our current workforce composition. And not surprisingly, and we talk with our union fairly regularly about this, I know Doug Arnett isn't here today, but Peggy also involved in at least discussions at the senior management level that ultimately are shared with the union. What we're finding, obviously, is a pretty good reflection in some areas of our business with minority and female hiring. In the craft work area in particular, that would be the area where we would be most unreflective of the labor market in terms of women and minorities. We'll continue through outreach, which is what David is suggesting, to work at better recruiting more women and minorities into our craft areas in particular. We do have a slight disconnection in our professional areas. We really look at 4 areas. I'm sorry, let me back up and try to make that 4 job groups. Senior management, essentially professionals, craft workers, and laborers. The craft workers, again, are the largest disconnect between what we should be able to find in the market and what we actually have in our workforce. So we'll continue to spend a significant amount of time trying to find qualified female and minority craft workers in our hiring process. Again, a little bit of a disconnection in professionals, which would be financial professionals and engineering professionals, but generally we look much like the labor markets in our senior management area and in our laborers area, but we do have additional work to be done. And kind of the callous statistics are one thing. How do we promote, and is it a welcoming environment? I think are important values that you as the board have certainly made clear. We as staff will continue to work on that diligently to make this a great environment for our employees, females, minorities, and majorities, if you will. Very important to us, and we're very pleased to be able to work with our AFSCME leadership also on doing everything we can to better recruit, retain, and promote females and minorities within the workforce. But I think that was the long and short of the presentation that you saw.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I'd forgotten to talk about Renee. I think that's a good positive.
Okay, and our finance, yes, anything else?
I came away positive from it. I didn't get the impression. I have worked with people that, done wallpaper on their efforts and not, really made the changes. I don't get that impression at all here. And I do like, the comparisons with looking at different demographics and, qualified folks within demographics versus who we have on our staff currently. And I think it's a real look, and I appreciate the work that the staff has done on this.
Thank you. The next one is finance and audit, and we substituted our finance and audit meeting for a special meeting that we held. I believe everyone's aware, so the minutes from that are in your packet. Next we have, as a standing committee meeting, and I do want to say on finance and audit, I've been chairing that committee, and I would be looking to other members of the board if there is any interest in taking that on, or if we would like to wait for our new board member to be appointed before we look at the current committee assignments. So I'm just wanting to put that out there to make sure everyone knows that we could change that chair position at any time should someone be interested. I think Bill brought that up last time.
I think if you do it.
Would you like to do that, Graham? Okay. Then we will appoint Graham as our chair for finance.
So noted.
I don't know, Graham. I've been doing that, I think, for 8 years. This is going to be a hard one to let go of. Okay, I'll let go.
Had I known our meetings were going to be this short, we should have made you chair a long time ago.
Is that to say the last chair was...
He was lousy.
Yeah, okay.
The next, and I think as we move on, we will have additional information to share on this, but our regionalization review committee that Graham and I are co-chairing, and Dave attended. The minutes from that initial meeting are in the packet, but I think it's worth having some conversation at this table that there is not a blueprint today that Des Moines Water Works has, much to the chagrin, I would say, of many people that think we know exactly how this would all be worked out. We're trying to be very open to our customers, to other leaders in the community. And so this will be a process, and we hope a very inclusive process as we move ahead to strengthen some of the relationships we have from customers and to look at other ways that we can do business as a regional utility. Graham, would you like to add anything?
I think that, for me, the simplest way to look at this is to think about, as a region, how best we can manage the resource that is water. We all know intuitively that if every city in this area went and built their own water plant and processing and tried to process its own needs for water, we'd be competing against each other. The cost would be ridiculous. And so while Des Moines Water Works has served as that kind of regional provider for a long time, now is a great time for us to think about, and Sue said this in the last meeting, think about the next 100 years and how best we plan for the planning, if not for any other word, of that resource over time. Now, things get complicated pretty quickly because you talk about governance and finances and all of those things, and that's where Sue is quick to say, we don't have the plan for how that's going to work. But I think if we, meaning people in this region, can get around the table and begin to agree on some of the basics, and that is, we're going to work together to manage the resource, then we can take the next step in the governance of some of these things. And so I don't want to sound like naive and think this is a simple process. I think it's a complicated process, but I think it's one that all of us at this table need to participate in and give a lot of thought to. And Sue and I are going to work on this committee, but this has to be a very open process that includes input and dialogue and discussion with not only everybody at this table, but the people we serve in the region.
And I want to make sure everyone knows that as we start to have conversations with some of the leaders in the suburban communities, I don't see this as a group at a table. I see this as a number of conversations that are going to be going on throughout the community. Obviously, we have our CERDWEC group that has been doing great work for a long time. We have the technical advisory group through CERDWEC that's doing work. We have our own finance and audit team that will be looking internally at our costs and our assets and reviewing things. So I don't want anyone to think that they are waiting for an invitation to be at the table, because there will be multiple groups, multiple engagements and conversations. And if anyone does not feel that they've been contacted or would like to be involved, please reach out to any one of us on the board and make sure we know.
And that, from a procedure standpoint, part of the reason that is because we don't know at this point what steps we'll have to take. I mean, is this going to be 2080 agreements that are between entities? We don't know. Is this going to be a referendum? Is this legislative action? Was it all of the above? We don't know those things yet. So we'll just have to work through that process. But, I believe, and I think Sue and Bill and I have talked about this quite a bit, that because of the political activity over the last few months in the legislature, we now have I'd like to think of it as kind of a reset button for us to go out there and do some things and to have these conversations. And if we do our job between now and next January, we're not going to solve all of this, but hopefully we'll have come to some agreements with people in this region about how we can move forward. They say we're not going to have every settled, and I don't want anybody to misunderstand what I'm saying. We're not going to have some sort of agreement drawn up by January.
Correct.
But if we do our job, we'll have some good conversations that'll lead us in that direction by January. Fair enough?
Yes. Mark, you look like you want to say something.
I don't think it is.
Okay. And then I do want to just call out and compliment one member of the staff that's been working a long time on building relationships with the suburban customers, and that's Amy Kaler. We had a meeting of the CERDWEC group here, kind of at the 11th hour before the legislature adjourned, and trying to seek their support in opposition to 484 as well as a resolution. And she masterfully handled that meeting and supported the utilities. So we may just now be getting on board on the regionalization, but Amy, I know you've been doing great work for a long time, so thank you.
Sue, before we leave this item, can I first of all assure the board that the staff will continue to support whatever direction you take on this in any role that we can. But from a scheduling standpoint, because this is now a standing committee of the board, staff intends, and I think your future meetings will indicate that every third Tuesday, that now is woven into our public meetings as a regular regionalization review discussion. And also, you mentioned CERDWEC. As chair, we will redesignate you as the official CERDWEC representative. I know several of you go to CERDWEC, and there's nothing particularly important about having to be the designated representative, but as chair, we will make sure that you are listed in our communications as the official Des Moines Waterworks representative. There is a CERDWEC meeting tonight, Sue.
And I will be there in Ankeny.
That's all I want to add.
Okay. Greater Des Moines Botanical Garden Board. Do we have a report?
We probably need to make an appointment to that board.
Okay. Do we have anyone on our current board, or would we like to hold on that until we have our new member of the board?
And, something to consider too, Sue, is whether, when this appointment was originally made, we were kind of forming our relationship with the Greater Botanical Garden. One could argue that this person could be a staff person that is our designee to that board. I'm not arguing for that, but it's possible that we can do that.
I think Peggy is really interested in that assignment, should it be moved to the staff. But I certainly think it is an appropriate opportunity for you to think about it, see if an appointed new member would be someone, as an example, that might have an interest or an aptitude. But at that time, perhaps that's a great opportunity for you to determine whether you want to continue to have board representation, because I do believe that many of the issues now between this board and the Botanical Garden, from a policy standpoint, have been resolved. There are a number of financial issues and other issues that we continue to, commitments that we continue to have with the Botanical Garden that I think could be resolved at a staff level effectively. But again, perhaps your fifth member will be somebody who would have a real interest in that, and you would want to choose to reappoint into that. But you may want to just wait and see at this point, and we'll continue to cover that base through Peggy's able leadership.
Yeah. So what you're saying is Peggy can kind of cover that position for now until we fill it.
Because there might even be something developing between the park board and the botanical. There may
The foundation board.
Yeah, there may be things that.
So there may be a number of considerations. We'll continue to at least keep the lines of communication open, and the existing business relationship between Waterworks and Botanical Garden supported through staff action.
One thing I'd mention is the appointment of Representative Servik should be done by board action. It'd be appropriate to take that action now if the board wanted to regularize.
Okay. I'll nominate you.
Chair's attendance tonight at the Servik meeting.
Okay.
Nominate you.
Thank you.
And I will second that.
I'll third it.
There we go.
Should we vote?
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, so at this point, Peggy, thank you if you would cover for any information. There is a rich history, however, with our involvement with Botanical Gardens, so I think it is a good idea to see if our new board member would be interested in maybe learning about that history and representing us. So we'll go on hold for our permanent replacement, and we move to Des Moines Waterworks Parks Foundation Board. Mark?
There are a number of things. One, there's a sigh of relief. As Hannah Edmond said, that they're glad that Des Moines Waterworks is still the main partner on this project. There were a lot of things up in question. They did want to form kind of a core group to deal with policy issues because of the legislative session. While not surprising, the amount of work and input and thought and so forth were a little bit much, so they wanted to make sure that there was a group that could respond in a quicker fashion and do that work. Major thing that we talked about was a wild designation for the wild area, as we've talked about with the development of the park, that we want people to know, oh really, this is where you can go. There were people concerned about what some of this meant, that if we're going to redo the park, that we're going to mow over everything and put up concrete, or what does that mean? And so we wanted to designate it as part of the wayfinding in parks and other things. You put up signage, and we want to have the signage, and there was a question about coordinating that with the regional MPO's got some regional signage standards that people can see and know that they, if you see a sign that says the same thing, but it looks slightly different, people question that. So we want to make sure that we understand, and when people can find that. There is now office space that Mr. Carroll would be, they found some free space over where the, I don't know if it came about because of the University of Iowa and the purchase with AIB and so forth, but there's now some space there for organizations such as this that are doing things in the community, and it's kind of co-located with some other similar things, so it's kind of a nice thing, and it can be used for some of the smaller committee meetings. The regular board meetings will be here on site, but that's a kind of nice thing to have a designated space to keep records and have people meet and do those things. I think also the big thing, the MPO, Gunnar Olson talked about, the MPO had raised necessary funds to get the engineering study done for the water trails plan, and it contracted with 2 different groups to conduct the studies. There is they will be using Databike to evaluate all the paved trails over the summer, and Google Street View for trails will be available for trails later this summer, which is a good thing. As far as users and trying to use the connectivity we saw last year, the folks that had spent a weekend putting up the website and making that stuff available for smartphones, and that's the way people get about now. Being able to see it and get excited about it, those are good things. Now, as with the legislative agenda and what that did as far as, some of the money available for it, we're still moving ahead. We still have things that are available. Water trails don't need repavement. There wasn't much money for that, but they put more money into the paved trails. But, what we've got is going to be a little bit independent of some of those things anyway. But we're still making some headway. And I think people are breathing a little sigh of relief, including donors and others that were wondering. Change can be positive, but the unknown is scary. So.
Good. Well, thank you.
If I may, Sue,
Yes.
15 seconds on water trails, just to remind the board that issues of Lowhead Dam, Center Street, Scott Street, here in our park on a different river, the Raccoon River, create significant hydraulic concerns that we will have to be involved in solutions as they work themselves through. Very expensive process. One doesn't simply remove dams and expect that storm sewer systems and water systems work with a different hydraulic gradient. So a lot of work to be done there. We're, again, happy to work with a number of interested parties and consulting engineers on it, but there may not be a lot of paving associated with water trails, but there's other associated complexities.
I think the mention of the Lowhead Dam was where I saw Danny's eyes get big during the meeting last month. It was kind of a moment of...
Not surprising.
What? I got to get on top of this. So, yeah, I think that's one of the things, and there's a lot of interest, and I think, the downtown Des Moines River area and what people are talking about doing there is, folks come in here and call us and so forth and talk about this stuff last year. Charles City has done this. They've got some good examples of how you can do this and maintain the water level without having the danger and the just basically the way the Lowhead dams look. Sometimes you can improve on that. So.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Next, we have legislative update by Jen Terry, and as she approaches the podium, think about before we had a Jen Terry, and I remember when Bill said we
We
need
didn't
to
have all
have...
this legislative stuff, but
No kidding.
I'm afraid you liked it better.
It's a fact.
But obviously, I don't know what we would have done this year without Jen and her ability to respond to quickly changing things at the legislature. So I believe she's going to maybe give us a recap now of how we ended up.
Yes, thank you. I'll just hit really quickly on four legislative actions that we watched closely over the session. So the first one was, of course, the effort to dismantle our water utility board and move governance to the city of Des Moines. Can't say enough about how grateful we are to our partner organizations, our ally organizations, our employees, Park Foundation was instrumental. We were in really close contact with them all through the process with donors and so on. If there's a way that we can give a big hug to all these people, we should do that because they were super helpful. The other utility folks from Urbandale and West Des Moines were up at the Capitol. Utilities from around the state drove all the way here from Waterloo and other places to the Capitol on our behalf to say this is a bad idea in general. So this took a lot of effort, but we killed it for this year, and we're already putting some plans in place to build relationships over this summer. So hopefully we can derail any similar efforts next year if they come about. Another thing that can affect some of our employees is the distracted driving law that went into effect. So Governor Branstad signed 2 pieces of legislation that collectively deal with texting while driving. So starting July 1st, texting while driving becomes a primary offense, which means law enforcement officers have the authority to pull drivers over if they think that you're texting while you're driving or taking pictures or using the internet. So they can just suspect that you're doing that by observing you and pull you over for that. So additionally, the new law will establish a penalty for drivers who accidentally kill others because they were using their cell phones unlawfully. So that's of note to people out in the field. The third area we watched carefully was collective bargaining. So Governor Branstad signed into law a dramatic scale back of collective bargaining law that affected state public workers. I think we're all pretty familiar with that, including health insurance, evaluation procedures, staff reduction, and so on. And then the last thing was the water quality legislation, which if you referred to your notes that are in your packet on my outreach and legislative matrix summary, there's sort of a summary of those 2 bills. One came through the House side and one came through the Senate side. One was sponsored by Representative Chip Baltimore, which we favored. It had more measures for success, more support of watershed management authorities, and so on over the Senate bill. But those 2, even though they're both Republican-controlled, could not come to an agreement on how to fund or implement any sort of large-scale water quality program, which was a very big disappointment to a lot of people, including us. So we're already, again, taking steps right now to work with ally groups and get in touch with key Republicans and Democrats over the summer. We want to be instrumental in leading the next charge for the next session on legislating meaningful water quality laws and rules. I think that's the end of my summary, unless you have questions.
2 things outside of water quality. One, I think that some of the water quality stuff, I don't know that it's the way that they fund these things. First, I don't think I Will was intended to be a water quality vehicle, and people are trying to sell it as such. The state of Missouri has figured out how to do somewhat similar program, and it provides huge amounts of economic development from recreational uses and improvements, scenic improvements, other things. And there would be some tangential water quality benefit from that. It's being sold as such. But they don't want to do funding on that the way it was originally intended and sold and approved by 63% of Iowans in 2010. They want to take away money from other places to do that. And I think that's designed not to, because out of necessity, but I think it's designed to pit people against each other on other issues, whether it's a false choice. We have either education or good water. You can't have both. I don't think that's true. So I'm concerned about that, and I want to watch. I think we do need real water quality. I think we all know that. Legislation, I don't think we've had a real commitment to that. I think closing the Loophole Center, threatening the Flood Center, taking away some more restrictions on the Flood Center, those are not water quality issues. I think maybe we fundamentally misunderstood what they meant when they said they were targeting water quality this year.
They were targeting something.
They were targeting, not improving it. But the other issue is if we watch, one of the first things we dealt with was pension, and we talked about pension a bit earlier. I got a message from a friend of mine who's a state representative in Illinois that they wanted to know about what we were doing with state employees and pension. They'd heard that there are all kinds of things that they'd heard about whether there was going to be a buyout or an offer to state employees. What does that mean for other folks? Are there going to be changes to IPERS and pension issues like that? So we want to be, obviously watching that kind of stuff as well. I talked to Danny Holman today that asked me head about some of those things. Who knows? They were also helpful on issues in contacting folks. Obviously, our workers had a vested interest in our future as an entity, and appreciate that stuff. Appreciate all your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right, we'll move to our CEO and General Manager comments.
I will be brief in reviewing goal progress. This is behind tab 4B in your materials. You'll recall that we have 6 goals as a utility for 2017. These are established in a pretty thorough process involving both our operating area but our finance area. Each of the 6 goals are progressing well. The first 3 I'll talk about are largely staff-related. CIS, Customer Information System. You know that we are beginning the process now to replace our legacy system. Amy and Pat Bruner are very much involved in that, as well as their staffs. We continue to move forward. You've appropriated money for the software development associated with that. The second and somewhat related issue, CPI compliance. This is the credit front office portion of our customer service interaction, particularly here and with credit card information that involves security associated with that, among other things. That continues to progress well. Third, from a front office standpoint or from a support staff standpoint, cost of service review. The Raftelis group has been here working with Peggy and her staff, as well as a number of our purchase capacity customers on an analysis of our current cost of service and some recommendations moving forward. Again, those are all largely here in the general office context. 3 that are far more specific to our operating business. First of all, on safety, under Ted's leadership and our union leadership, the safety committee, you'll see in the materials that you have, we have had but 1 OSHA recordable injury this year. I believe relative to last year, we would probably have been at 8 or so last year. This time, maybe a little bit less than that. I wish that I could say that there was some brilliant epiphany that had brought us to this. Good weather is a significant contributor in the winter months to a reduction in injuries. We had a very warm winter and a very warm spring. We have had 1 OSHA recordable. We'll continue to work on this with great focus. It's very important in our view to be a good and sought-after employer. We continue to work on safety. Sue and Graham both talked about regionalization review. A key issue in regionalization review and a true focus on a regional production utility is long-term planning. HDR, a international consulting group that we are working with, continues to move us and primarily the CERDWIC Technical Committee forward to develop a long-range plan. It's also very instrumental in our Des Moines Water Works 5-year CIP. We're on task for that, and you'll hear more about that in the month of June in particular. And finally, Mike McKernan and his staff continue to work on a number of different improvements at the Saylorville water treatment plant to move us toward the equivalent of 10 million gallons of production there in summer production months. Each of these 6 goals are very important to us. We continue to work, among other things, toward the achievement of these goals, as well as regular operation of our business and planning associated with moving forward on a number of fronts. Happy to answer any questions you may have on that, but you'll continue to receive quarterly reports from us. I'm pleased that we've made progress on all of these. We hope to be able to report similar progress 3 months from now. That's all I had under my comments, Sue.
Thank you. Just one other thing on regionalization, and I hope this came through, but I just want to be real clear with the staff. The staff's always so respectful and making sure you have the recommendations to us, but if you have ideas and thoughts, I mean, you are living this every single day. If you have thoughts and ideas as to what should be done as we look at regionalization or groups we don't want to forget? Or have we ever thought about looking at it this way? Just, shoot Bill a note, shoot Graham and I a note, and just throw it out there because, you live in it. And so I just want to make sure that when I'm talking about all these other groups, I'm not excluding staff.
May I cut it up for just a minute, Sue? I think that I've certainly had the conversation with you and Graham in your role as the regionalization review that staff meets regularly on this subject. I believe we'll meet next week. We're essentially meeting every other week to look at, in our view, a number of different permutations and issues. I would suggest to you in this context 2 or 3 things that we as a staff keep running toward as objectives in regionalization discussions. One of which is a point that I've heard Graham made in several different ways, as well as you, Sue, and that's one size may not fit all as we move forward. That is, we have a number of agreements, whether they're purchase capacity agreements or total service agreements with communities that may very well be the norm for those communities 2 years from now after a regionalization review. So one size will not fit all. Another, I think, 2 other points that I would make. One is that at some point I believe that it's going to benefit the process to look at some kind of either mediator or facilitator in the process of these discussions, even though they're in small groups now. Ultimately, I think to reach an agreement, you're going to need some assistance. And somewhat relatedly to that, some of that assistance may in fact be third-party professional assistance from something like a Black & Veatch, who, as you know, provided assistance to you several years ago. I think it's important for you to recognize that we'll be ready, willing, and able to help you in that process should you reach it. And then finally, just one other point that continues to emerge in our discussions. A regionalization discussion that truly looks at regional utility has to have an exclusivity provision within it, in our view, from staff's perspective. That is, we cannot continue to have a situation where we talk about regionalism, but we have individual communities that threaten to build their own production facilities. That's very much counter, in our view, to the economies and engineering associated and planning associated with regional water production in particular. And we certainly look forward to working with you and council on different forms that could take. But real regionalism does not mean people talking about pulling away from a regional utility, threatening to build their own facilities, or even arguably peaking off of us under current agreements. That is, using their own low-cost facilities and backing into us during high demand, high use, high cost occasions. So we're very excited about being able to assist you in that process. We realize that we're an assisting role, not a policy making role, but as we continue to turf up issues based on your invitation and our natural proclivities anyway, we'll be feeding them into the process. But we recognize that we are to the side to be able to help you in that process, and certainly are anxious to do that.
I have a question on that, Bill, and maybe I'll look at our counselor and maybe he can answer it. With an opening on our board, with the 5th position being open, is the mayor restricted to appoint someone from the city of Des Moines?
Yes.
And so there is nothing this board could do as far as a recommendation as we move toward regionalization to begin that process through having someone sitting at this board?
You cannot reconstitute yourself, would be how I would answer that. That is, under city code and under existing law, you are a 5-person resident of Des Moines, mayor-appointed, city council confirmed group of overseers.
Because I'm sure many of you have had the same question that I have. Why haven't you made the recommendation as a board to the mayor? So that's why I'm raising it now.
I think it's conceivable that the city could alter its ordinance, but this board has no ability to do anything of that kind.
So the city would need to make a change in that. Okay.
Or state law.
Or state law, right, we know the state law direction. Okay, thank you.
Which is not preferred. I can tell by my counsel's look.
All right, with that, I'll have a motion for adjournment. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And we will move into our afterboard presentation, the utility history case.
And I think all of you are familiar with a great deal of work that's been done by Laura and Doug Oscarson, a number of Mike's folks in water production, and moving the old museum up here in front. Actually, they're doing some finishing work today, and the display case is just outside. As part of that, there is a looped video of some highlights that Laura and Doug and others have selected for the time period of 1871 to present, but particularly focusing on 71 to 1919, and then which would have been under private ownership, and then from 1924. So without further ado,